Last week we did a video breaking down 5 production techniques that the 1975 used throughout their new album, Being Funny in a Foreign Language, and you all liked that video so much that you were highly requesting that we do an entire production breakdown of the 1975, so that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. We're basically going to look at an entire production. I'm going to show you drum samples that I've selected for the sounds. I'm going to show you how to dial in guitar tones, and by the end of this video, you should have a good idea on how to produce a song like the 1975, or even artists like Bleachers, or a lot of the other kind of indie pop things that Jack Antonoff is producing, because a lot of these elements kind of overlap with each other. So we're going to dive in and look at everything that goes into a session like this. But before we do, my name's Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music. We have weekly tutorials on music and music production. So if you like this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe because we have a ton others and we do this every single week. Other than that, if you want to support us after this video, you can head over to our website, Make Pop Music, after the video. You can check out samples, presets, courses, MIDI packs, all kinds of good stuff. And just a little sneak peek, if you are watching this video, today is November 18th when we release this tutorial. However, on Monday, November 21st, we are launching our Black Friday sale, and it's 50% off all sample packs, preset packs, all of our classic courses, MIDI packs, and we're launching a whole new production course. It's 14.5 hours and 76 lessons, and that will also be at a discounted price. So if you want to wait until Monday, you can head over to our website and you can grab almost everything for 50% off. But if you want to grab something over the weekend, you can head over to makepopmusic.com right now, and you can just grab everything at its normal price, which is still very, very affordable. But let's dive into Cubase so I can actually go over a production in the style of the 1975, Bleachers, and Jack Antonoff in general. What I want to do to start a 1975 style production is lay down some kick and snare just to get our basic rhythm. One thing that I notice is they go kind of simple with kick and snare patterns often because they're doing some more complex bass lines and they have a lot of call and response with their guitars. So we're going to just lay down a simple 4 on the floor with a kick and a simple snare on the 2 and the 4, and that's just going to give us enough basis. We can change that later if we need, but I'd rather have more room to play around with groove a little bit later with melodic elements. So let's do that. All right, let me just quantize this. One thing that I do want to go over, and this is a lot of questions that we had last week, even in that production kind of breakdown, is what samples we're using. So in this one, we're using a kick called Shaken. This is from our Nashville pack on our website. The kick and the snare and the toms are all from that pack, and I think it's normally $20, but again, if you go shop our Black Friday sale starting on Monday, the pack is $10, and there's a bunch of really cool stompy, kind of Nashville-esque drum samples in here. You can hear that it's a little longer. I'm cutting it short. I don't need a lot of that tail in that room. I prefer it a little drier and a little bit punchier. And then for the snare, I'm also using a snare from that pack called Brit Vibes. It's literally like styled after the 1975. So you can hear that it's already got that gated vibe kind of baked into it because I knew that we were making a 1975 sample. However, I am doing a little bit of extra processing on this. I'm going to pop a gate on, and I'm going to show you how to get a gated snare in just 1 second if you don't have any samples like this. And this is basically just closing that off a little bit tighter, and then I've just got an S1 imager to kind of narrow it because with that gate, it's a little wide, and the 1975 drums tend to be a little bit mono, or at least semi-mono, kind of up the middle. They're not as wide as something like a modern sample, and we're doing the same thing with a kick. We've kind of got a little bit of an imager on it, and we've just got a hair of EQ just to take away some of that thump, make it feel a little bit more vintage. And then other than that, we've got a really nice kick and snare. And then we can fill that in. But before we go and we do bass lines or melodic elements, I do want to show you how to get a gated snare if you don't have samples like this. So let's do that real quick. Here is a snare sample that I picked. It's just from our pop pack, and it sounds like this. You can do this with acoustic snares or more electronic snares. This one kind of sits in the middle, but what you're going to want to do is once you've picked a snare, you're going to end up popping a pretty big reverb on it. I'm going to be using Verb Suite, and I'm using the Rich Chamber version 3 room out of the 224 XL. Here are my settings if you want to copy it. Again, pick your width if you want this to be a wide gate, a short gate. You can kind of dial that in, and then I like to have kind of a medium release, kind of around 1 to 1.5 seconds. And we're going to go pretty wet on this, normally between 25 and 40. And then what you need to do is pop on a gate. I'm just using the stock one in Cubase. It's really simple. And then you're just going to dial your threshold back, and then you can set your release as short or as slow as you want. And the way that a gate works is basically it kind of triggers the same way that a compressor does, where it has a threshold and it can see audio above or below a certain volume. And so once audio gets quieter than minus 25.5 dB on this setting, it's basically just going to cut it off. And the release tells it how fast it's going to cut off. So if you want that really snappy kind of 1975-esque gate, you're going to go with something between like 10 milliseconds and 30 milliseconds. But if you have it up here, You can see it's not even really gating because it's so long. If I dial this back to 10 or 20, let's kind of take a look at this. And it's giving you that really short pop. And it's something that they use in most of their productions. And then it's kind of got that baked into that snare that we kind of used earlier. And I'm just kind of doing a little bit of extra gating. So here we go. And that's how you get that nice kind of vintage gated sound. Try it on electronic samples, try it on acoustic samples. It's a really cool thing to add some width and to add some texture to a snare that you might have. I'm going to do a bass line now. I'm just going to trigger this. However, I could play the bass if I wanted to, but we're just going to use Trillium for this. I'm using the Clean Fender Mute Sustain. So I'm going to lay a bass line, do a little bit of processing to make it fit a little bit better, and then we'll move on from there. Here is the MIDI that we have for the bass. So I'm basically just playing an A, a B, and a D. And we're kind of pedaling between those three notes. And then I'm just adding in some like little bass riffs and slides and stuff here and there. So here's what it sounds like with the drums. I noticed that the 1975 liked to have a kind of busier bass. So that's really what I wanted to do. And by having that really simple drum progression, it allows us to get a little bit funky with this. So we're going to leave it right there. I want to go in and add some keys just to kind of fill out a musical bed. And then we're going to do a bunch of guitars on this. Here's the first synth that I want to add in. It's just an Arp. Anything that Jack Antonoff has done in the past like 7 years is going to have Arps all over it. The 1975 also use these. I just find them nice for filling out melodies and chords, but not having something that feels a little bit stale. And we're just playing the chords that kind of correspond with the bass. Here is the patch. It's just called Arp Neverending Story. And then I've just adjusted a few things in the advanced tab, but really nothing that insane on this. And then I am doing some processing. We've got a trance gate, and that's going to kind of tighten that up. You'll kind of see what I'm saying. And then we've got just some EQ that is going to open and close as we go. And then we've got this tape saturation by Baby Audio. So you can kind of hear that this is already adding vibe. It sounds very Jack Antonoff. It sounds very 1985. Without all that processing, here's what it sounds like straight out of Arturia. And you'll see that there's a common theme when you're making something like this. You kind of want to dirty up everything. Everything needs to have a little bit of texture. It needs to have a little bit of grit, and it needs to have this kind of imperfection, because people like the 1975 and Jack Antonoff use a lot of analog gear, and you get some of that when you start using that. So if you're using plugins, don't be afraid to saturate things. Don't be afraid to make things kind of phase and shift. Don't be afraid to really go in and make everything sound a little bit more gritty and lifelike. And with the drums and the bass, it sounds like this. And then we've got these keys. I'm calling these like kind of backbeat keys. It's something that you hear the 1975 do quite a bit. And it's more so just like sitting off the one and then kind of playing a backbeat element with these kind of extended chords. So. And it's simple enough that once we add like really funky guitar, it's not going to get in the way. However, there's not so much going on that it's, you know, chaos. And it's not boring. It provides a little bit of texture. As far as patches for this, we're just using the MK80 Rhodes Celeste out of Keyscape. We're doing a little bit of processing, just using some virtual channel that we talked about in the last 1975 tutorial. And then this is a plugin I've been using a lot recently. It's called Subcut, and it just takes out a lot of the low end from things like keys. And it's basically doing a filter that kind of moves with the note. So it's really cool to cut off like really low fundamentals without just having to do kind of a blanket cut at 200 or 300 or whatever. So really cool plugin. It's normally available for like really, really cheap. Something I highly advise you just go check out. It's a really cool kind of utility plugin. And then I'm just adding some Black Hole from Eventide. You already know that we want to make it a little bit more expansive. Same thing on this other key patch. It's literally just the same processing, but instead I'm using the Rhodes Lush Octavia. And then those together is kind of giving me this really bright bell sound. With that Arp. And then one cool thing that I found is this kind of like acoustic loop from the new Cashmere pack. I think it's volume 4. And I just processed it, tuned it a little bit, and kind of added some band passing. But it adds this really cool kind of weird lifelike texture. And that felt really 1985 to me. Sometimes they use a lot of like world elements. They'll use things like sitars. They'll use things like banjos. I don't know. It's just something that I've heard in a lot of their records. And once I found that, I was like, that's kind of cool. Panned it all the way to the left. I'm kind of playing around with that stereo spread that we talked about in the 1975 5 Tips video. So if you haven't watched that, go watch that. I don't want to dive too much into things that we've already covered. But here's what all of these sound like. Let's start adding some guitar, and then what I'm going to do is build it up with every element, and then we're going to scale it back, add things like our automation, and I'll show you how we actually have a final song come together. Let's go ahead and look at the first two main guitars. We kind of covered these in the last 1975 video, but we've basically got this guitar that's sitting on the left ear. It's just a Fender Strat on pickup position 3, which is the middle pickup, and then I am using the Corey Wong amp for this. I am doing this on the compressor, basically just adding a little bit of snap and kind of taming some transients. And then we have the second amp right here, the Clean Machine. Here are the settings if you want to copy that. Doing a little bit of EQ to kind of get some low mids in there and ease out those high mids. And then other than that, it's really all about this chorus pedal and this reverb pedal over here. And then we're just doing some EQ to tame all of that. Nothing wild there. And then same thing on the right side. We're kind of doing something similar with the Corey Wong amp. It might even be these exact same settings. We just swapped over to the DI amp instead. And then one thing that's really cool on this one is we have this little altar boy that's 12 semitones up, and I've blended that in, and it sounds like this. And it adds this weird, like, almost granular synthesis element, and that's something that I hear a lot in their songs and Jack Antonoff productions. It's just utilizing guitar as something more like a synth. So we're going to have those kind of happen throughout. I've also printed those, so as we start fleshing this out, we can automate them a little bit easier, and it's only one file. You can hear that I've already put some band passing on stuff like that. Then we have these guitar hits that are just using that guitar chordal element that we talked about in that 1975 video before with the Tim Henson amp. Just doing little hits. And if you want to see that effect, you can go check out the 5 production techniques from the 1975 video that we did the week before. And then other than that, you've got to have your kind of plucky guitar doing the call and response. So we've got one on the right. Again, Fender Strat for everything on here. Here are the settings. It looks like I'm doing a little bit more compression on these because it's plucky. Here are the amp settings. We have the bright knob engaged. Same thing on the EQ, I think. Same thing on the... Maybe we swapped out the mics on this cab. And then other than that, we are just dialing the chorus and the reverb way back. I want something a little bit drier and pokier for this. And typically, their kind of plucked leads tend to be a bit drier. And then on the other side, we're doing that clipping processing that we talked about in the last video, where it's going to be clipped audio from the virtual mix rack, and it just adds a nice little bit of saturation pre-amp. And it almost gives us this like slightly saturated sound. Without anything, it sounds like this. And then we've got a little bit of space echo. And I mean, that's really it. Other than that, we've got this transient designer just to make sure that after we've clipped that amp, it's not insane, but there's really nothing else happening on that. And then the last thing that we have is like the quintessential 1975 guitar. Here's what it sounds like without any processing. It's just a Fender Strat on the neck pickup. And then we just have the Corey Wong amp. This one is on the amp snob. It's got a little bit more saturation, doing some compression, and then again, just going wild with the chorus on this. This is like the 1975 guitar tone. One thing to keep in mind too is if you're using a lot of amps with these choruses and these flangers and things like that, make sure that you have this on a stereo track because that is a stereo effect and it will need to be on a track that will play it stereo, even if it's something mono like a guitar. So here's all of those guitars. I'm going to piece this out together a little bit more one-on-one, get you guys the full instrumental and the vocals, and then we're going to go over the rest of the elements. But this is all of the kind of main ingredients to a 1975 song. I went ahead and finished out the rest of the instrumental and tracked some vocals off camera because I'd rather spend time actually going over everything than conceptualizing it. So here we go. For the drums, it really is just that main kick and snare. And then for hi-hats, what I did is I found a couple live hi-hat loops from Arp hi-hats in the Make Pop Music store. And then what we're using is for the first half of the verse, we've got a hi-hat that kind of sits on the backbeat. And I like them nice and saturated and roomy. It sounds really 1975-y to me. And then what we're doing is we have a second hi-hat loop that's doing a little bit more of kind of an upbeat, kind of dancey pattern. And that's really going to go throughout the chorus as well. And then we just added in some toms. These are just from our Nashville pack. I didn't do literally any processing to these whatsoever, but they sound pretty great. And then that's pretty much it for the drums for now. We'll get to the chorus in 1 second, but let me go over everything else that we might have added. Bass is exactly what we did. And then again, keys is exactly what we kind of already covered for the verse. The only thing is I am doing some different automation, so you're going to hear filters open and close. And then for the guitar, I just picked out, I'm just only doing those little plucky guitars for the first half, and then I am going to put those ambient guitars that was that left and that right guitar that we did earlier, comp down into one. That's going to start coming in on the second half. And then we're also going to engage some filtering on this. So we've got a little bit of filtering opening and closing. Other than that, it's just some gain. And then I've talked about this a ton, but the amplified instrument processor, just to kind of soften up that guitar and make it sound a little bit more natural. And then other than that, for the second half, so you can hear the intensity really pick up because we're picking up those hi-hats and we have that more kind of ambient guitar bed sitting under everything. But other than that, we don't really add anything. The only thing we do is we have a little turnaround here. And then we're going into the chorus. So let's talk about all of the additions that we have for the chorus, because there are quite a few. One of the main elements of the chorus that I wanted to add is just thickening up these drums and the percussion a little bit. So I added things like shakers, tambourines, and some little clap loops and things like that. So the shakers and tambourines are from the shaker and tambourine pack on our store. And then we have the cowbell and the perk loop all from, I believe, Splice. And we've just got some like risers and hits and things like that. So we've got some cashmere rises. We've got some stuff from our Sounds of Life pack. And then all together you get this. It sounds a little bit bigger and a little bit more grand and intentional. We've got the shaker pan to one side and the tambourine pan to one side. It's just opening up that stereo field a little bit with the drums being so kind of centered for the kick, the snare, and that main hi-hat. I want to add some width with things like shakers, tambourines, claps, perks, things like that. So I'm going kind of wide with all of those. And then other than that, there's just these like little down hits. Bass is the exact same. The only thing that I wanted to do was make the bass a little bit longer, so we're not cutting all these notes off so fast. And that's just going to give us a little bit more kind of like grandiose. It's basically just makes the chorus feel a little bit bigger. And then other than that, the only thing that we add into the chorus is this extra keys layer. It's just these phasey keys from Keyscape. But they are doing the exact same thing. Other than that, we still have that ARP going. We've kind of opened up the filter. We do have a whistle loop that'll come into the post-chorus that I'll show you in 1 second. And then we just have the texture loop and then those kind of like stabby 80s keys. For the guitar arrangement in the chorus, we do start to pick it up a little bit. We have that plucked guitar from the verse. We have those ambient guitar beds. And then we're adding that kind of classic quintessential 1975 twangy guitar on top. So now with all of the synths, all of the guitars, all of the drums, and all of the extra perks, here is the arrangement for the chorus. And you can hear that every single element is adding a little bit of rhythm. So we have a really basic kick and snare, a pretty basic hi-hat, and then we've got those plucky guitars adding a rhythm. We've got those twangy guitars adding a rhythm. We've got those ambient guitars adding a rhythm. And then we've got the bass line, and then we've got those back end keys. So everything's kind of working in conjunction with each other, but we're getting this really kind of maximalist, really busy kind of pop arrangement that the 1975 and Jack Antonoff are both pretty known for. And then other than that, the only thing that we kind of add to this post-chorus is I found this little whistle loop. It's also in the intro that I'm about to show you guys. But again, it's just from the Cashmere pack. I just did a little bit of finessing. I wanted something like a harmonica or like a saxophone, and then I kind of found this that felt like it was kind of in the middle. I know it's not something that they would exactly use, but it kind of filled the space really nice for me. And that is kind of everything for the instrumental. The one thing that I did want to do is give us a very, very long intro. So for the intro, we've got those guitars that we talked about first. We play that for 8 measures, and then we bring in that chordal guitar that we covered in the last 1975 video. And then after the first 4 measures, we're pulling in this arp and this whistle loop for the kind of next 8. So it's a 12-bar intro. It's 4 of just guitar, and then 8 of guitar keys, and then 4 of that chordal guitar coming on top. Added some RC20 just from some distortion, some wobble, and quite a bit of reverb. And then other than that, one thing that I really wanted to do for this intro was add quite a bit of like weird ambience. And we used our Sounds of Life pack all throughout this. And I just basically grabbed a bunch of weird kind of ambient noises and just made some soundscapes. So it's really just like the AM radio on acid, the outside ambient noise, this whistle siren, and then we have an elevator. And then we have that kind of like banjo-y, mandolin-y loop from Cashmere that we used earlier, just swelling up. We do that with just some extended bass notes. And we've got kind of a nice, long, building 1975 style intro. That's everything that goes into the actual instrumental. Other than that, it's really just vocal production. And so for vocals on this, I'll talk a little bit about it. We covered how to do that kind of space echo in the last 1975 video, but if you don't want to go check that out or you didn't see it, it's basically just a normal vocal chain with this popped in on the end. It's really, really simple. Here's what the vocal sounds like without it, so you can kind of hear it in context.
I'm smoking cigarettes in the back of a taxi. I can shake the vision of you undressed in the backseat.
And with it, I mean, this is literally like instant Jack Antonoff 1975.
I'm smoking cigarettes in the back of a taxi. I can shake the vision of you undressed in the backseat.
And then for the verse, it's mainly just one vocal throughout the first half. We do have a phrase where we're stacking the left and the right vocal.
I feel you watching me.
Right there. And then we're doing a bunch of vocal stacks for these.
I feel you watching me.
And then these are all dry. I basically just have them going to a vocal harms group that is just doing some compression. I'm using the 910 harmonizer. Again, Eventide works out really, really, really well for this stuff. I'm using some vintage verb. And then other than that, it is just gain. Here's what these sound like completely dry.
I feel you watching me.
And then with it.
I feel you watching me.
That works out really well there.
I feel you watching me.
And then what I wanted to do is once everything picks up with the new hi-hats, we have those ambient guitars, I am changing melody. And so what I'm doing is I'm singing really low, and then I've got everything basically triple tracked, and I'm doing these response vocals. So here's what it sounds like in the context, and then I'll break it all down.
So baby, won't you ease my mind? Come and hold me over, cause I'm losing time. I keep falling for American girls.
So the main one is just that kind of space echo main vocal.
So baby, won't you ease my mind? Come and hold me over, cause...
And then we've just got a version tracked left and right.
So baby, won't you ease my mind? Come and hold me over, cause I'm losing time.
Nothing is vocal lined at all. I want everything a little bit messy and rough around the edges. And then we have this response vocal that is basically the same exact thing, just with some tape from Baby Audio, just to kind of make it a bit gritty and add a little bit of a distortion. And then we're just doing some heavy band passing to make sure that it doesn't get too gnarly. And then we're stacking that left and right with some kind of space echo vocals. And then that with it.
I keep falling for American girls.
And then what really makes it sound super 1975 is on those same exact harmony stack layers that we had earlier. I just sang O in a bunch of different notes. So I think there's this one right here. There's... And then there are ones that sound like this. And then there are even higher ones that sound like this. And then all of those together panned out. Super cool 1975 vocal stack. They do it all the time. You hear it all the way back to their first album, and they're still doing it. And then we kind of finish out the rest of the verse with the same thing, just twice.
Quiet, but you love to fight. Sip a little gin and blow a couple lines. I think I'm obsessed with arrogant girls. I can't wait.
And then for the chorus, really easy vocal production. It is just the space echo vocal up the middle, the drier vocal left and right. And then on those space echo response vocals that I had earlier, I'm just doing a harmony.
Wait, no more. You're just on my floor. Break my heart. But I can't seem to take no more. Walk right out the...
I mean, really the star of this show is like space echo. That's pretty much the only thing that's outside of the norm for us. And that is the entire production. I'm going to play it start to finish so you can hear it. But here's how you get a song to sound like the 1975 or Bleachers or really anything else Jack Antonoff wants to work on.
Undressed in the backseat. I see your silhouette every time I go to sleep. I feel you watching me. So baby, won't you ease my mind? Come and hold me over, cause I'm losing time. I keep falling for American girls. Quiet, but you love to fight. Sip a little gin and blow a couple lines. I think I'm obsessed with arrogant girls. I can't wait no more. Your dress on my floor, break my heart. But I can't seem to take no more. Walk right out the door. I hate this part. Cause I must be falling for you. Cause I must be falling for you. Cause I must be falling for you. Cause I must be falling for you.
And then after that, you can have your verse too, you can have your bridge, you can go as crazy as you want, but that should cover the basics of how to get a song in this style. If you like this video, please let us know by liking, commenting, and subscribing. It does help us out more than you know. Other than that, please let us know in the comments what videos you want to see in the near future. And if you want to grab a lot of the sounds that you heard in this production, or you want to support our channel, head over to makepopmusic.com and you can check out all of our sample packs, preset packs. We have classic courses, and on Monday, we launch our Black Friday sale, and we're launching our brand new Producer Principles 101 course, which again is 14.5 hours, 76 lessons. I literally will build a song from start to finish in real time. So if you like a lot of what we do in these videos, but you want to see it in much more depth, that's going to be all for you. That comes out Monday. Other than that, you can head over to the website whenever. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you guys with more content soon. Much love. Peace.